it took me about a month to finish Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. And that was about 85 hours, I believe. So with that being said, this is how I'm going to go about it. Like I said earlier, I'm going to start with what I hated. I'm going to talk about what I disliked, and then I'll talk about what I loved. So let's talk about what I hated. And I think most people that played the game are going to agree with me. I really hated that there's no Materia loadouts. For some reason, they still didn't bring that over. And it's crazy because if I remember correctly, in the original game, you can kind of just swap Materia between party members. Just very easily. You can just kind of pick one, pick the other, and swap them all in one go. And it's crazy that they couldn't implement something like that here. And I guess that I get that there's like equipment and different weapons, and they all have different materia slots. But my God, why couldn't they make some sort of materia loadout system? Because I got to the point near the end of the game that I was just like, oh my God! Every time they switch the characters, right? Like different party members like you didn't have in your active party, you have to spend like 5 to 10 minutes to manually, shift around the materia. Pretty annoying. So that's really the only thing I hated about the game. That's a good start, isn't it? Now, what I disliked about the game. I always liked how the old school Final Fantasy games had this specific, they had a flow, right? It kind of almost always started relatively simple and grew from there, right? This feels like the evolution of the world map, right? And I'm going to talk about the world map later. But 7 Rebirth and its open world really feels like the world map of old Final Fantasies in HD, right? What I didn't like about that aspect was specifically a lot of the checklist stuff, right? I think that the game could have benefited from having less towers and less life springs. Essentially less of the checklist items, right? The checklist stuff within the open world segments that are the same in each area. The mini games and the proto relic quests are different in each area, but these two in particular really stuck out, and I was not a fan of that. I think that it could have done with less. I mean, look at Nebel, right? When you get to Nebel in chapter 11, the area is a little bit smaller. There's less towers, less life springs to go over. It actually felt really friggin' good. It felt like this was the pacing that I wanted for the entire game. I think that the devs really wanted to go with a, go all out kind of like design philosophy, and I admire them and I give them kudos for that. But I think the game would have benefited a lot from having just a little bit less, maybe like 2 or 3 less towers, or maybe 2 or 3 less life springs within each area might have benefited. I genuinely think so. A lot of the minigames, which they were all pretty much good minigames. I'm surprised that there were so many of them in such high quality. But there's a point in the game where you are given minigame after minigame after minigame, and they're all you have to do them, right? They're mandatory. And at that point, right, in the Gold Saucer in particular, at that point, it made sense. But later on in the game, I'm like, damn, I'm playing a lot of minigames, man. Again, I don't want to complain because I do like the minigames. I love the Yakuza or Like a Dragon series a lot, and those games are also full of minigames as well. I just think that maybe they could have been spaced out a little more, at least the mandatory ones, That could go into potentially changing the way the game is played and changing the design entirely. So I don't necessarily think it might have benefited overall. It's just my opinion that I think there were just too many at one time that were mandatory. And this is where it gets a little spoilery, so if you haven't played up to the point of no return, then this might be spoilery for you, so keep that in mind. Zack is playable in certain segments of the game, right? At the beginning of the game, you're thrown into this section here, and you're playing as Zack. And this was incredible. I don't think very many people expected this, even though I thought it would happen. It did make sense, but actually doing it and playing it felt awesome, right? And I think that a lot of the stuff with Zack and his timeline or other world, right, was sprinkled too little, right? It was like they were teasing it so frigging much, and then when you finally got to a point where you're like seeing what's happening in the other world, it's like a very, very tiny little segment. It doesn't come very often. You go like sometimes tens and tens of hours before each segment, and it's like, I didn't mind that it was being teased throughout. However, it felt like it was so little. And then at the very end, it's like, you see so much of it. And again, if you haven't played the ending of the game, I'm not going to go into those details. But the end, you get obviously a lot of it, most of it, So I think that it would have benefited the game, at least from a fan's perspective, if those were a little bit more spaced out. And that's what I disliked. So doing pretty good. One thing that I hated, and honestly, few little nitpicks about things that I disliked from the game. Let's talk about what I loved. I loved the world map. I mentioned earlier that the world map of the old Final Fantasy games always were growing, right? Always were starting you very simple. And then from the small beginnings of just walking around the world to getting on a chocobo, you finally get some vehicles, and eventually you're flying all over the world. I can't believe that Rebirth somehow managed to do this, and it was so good, right? You're seeing here, this is the part of the game right at the beginning where I'm just walking around, just exploring on foot, doing some really weird parkour because I was trying to figure out if there was anything hidden over here. But it starts off very simple. You're walking around, and eventually you get your chocobo, right? It kind of gets you through there. And that's how you play for the majority of the game. You're going to be on chocobo for a good chunk of time. Eventually you get the buggy, and then eventually you get the tiny bronco. And also in between those parts, the areas like Gongaga or Cosmo Canyon, you have different varieties of chocobo, right? They all kind of play a little bit differently. They all traverse the world pretty differently. They did it. And then by the end, when you're in a tiny bronco and you're like the open world is open to you, it's seamlessly open. You can traverse like the entire ocean on this thing. And I could not believe that that's where I was playing. It's been so long since a Final Fantasy game did this. With 13 in the HD era, like they kind of went away from it, right? With 10, they really went away from the idea of the world map. The world map was very linear and literally a map you chose destinations from. 13 didn't have that. 14, it's open zones, and 15 was just straight up open world. It wasn't like a map that kind of continued to grow. You just kind of explored something that already existed with your car and stuff like that. I was really happy, dudes. This game, like in terms of that progression of the world map, this was what I wanted from an HD Final Fantasy for a very long time. Cannot believe that they were able to manage it now. I mean, so long after the fact too. But yeah, so kudos to the devs for the world map. I'm glad they were able to do it the way they did. And then of course, the combat. Incredible. Incredible. There is nothing about this combat system that I would change. I genuinely believe that I believe his name is Taruki Endo. So Taruki Endo, he's the combat designer. He also worked on Monster Hunter World, and obviously he worked here. And my goodness, man, this dude really figured out the combat, because from remake to rebirth, it's a whole different world, man. It feels totally different in the best ways. I mean, it still feels the same. It's the same system, right? But it's iterated upon in such a way that just, yeah, this is like the perfect Final Fantasy combat system. Genuinely believe that. It's a perfect mix between, strategy and action, right? With its take on the ATB system. Yeah, all the implementations. Air combat feels amazing. The synergy abilities, oh my god, yeah. No. I can't sing its praises enough. Combat in this game is incredible, and dynamic actually kept me on my toes. Can't imagine what a hard mode felt like. The other thing that I loved was the music. And again, I feel like most of the stuff that I'm talking about here has been echoed throughout the reviewers and the people that have talked about this game. But the music is just so good. I think that this is the best game soundtrack since Nier Automata. And I there's other Final Fantasy games that have incredible soundtracks, 16, 14, again, that I've played since Nier Automata. But Nier Automata is one of those soundtracks that are just like, right? they transcend gaming, in my opinion. This soundtrack is up there, man. This game has some songs that are made for just one side quest, and you never hear them again. That's insane, and it's a bop. And you know what I'm talking about. It's the Stamp theme remix. Holy shit, what a song, what a bop, bow wow wow, motherfucker. So yeah, this is probably one of the best soundtracks I've heard in gaming in a long time. I do think it's up there with Nier Automata soundtrack. One of the best Final Fantasy soundtracks of all time. It is, I can't wait. I ordered the physical deluxe edition of the soundtrack. It's coming in the mail now. It's good. I love the soundtrack. Oh my god. There's one song in the end, or near the end of the game, that I couldn't believe I was just listening to that. Oh, man. The next thing that I loved were the characters, right? The characters of Final Fantasy VII already stood out in the original game. The writing that they've implemented in the remake trilogy are beyond what I would have expected. I think the writing here is top-notch for these characters. You may have your feelings for the story, but overall, dude, Barrett, Tifa, Yuffie, Aerith, even Vincent and Cid, who are not really big parts of the story in this game, and they're not really like active members of your party. They're just written so well. They're so much fun to be around with, and so it's so good to see them interact with each other too. Barrett and Yuffie had so many cute scenes. Also, Yuffie and Red, just Yuffie in general. Yuffie is such a well-written character in this game. I couldn't believe it, man. There's just so many moments. The Loveless scenario in Chapter 12 blew my mind. It was just like these guys were just having fun in this VR-like setting. I loved it. I actually got emotional. I wish I would have streamed that. I didn't. I played that on my own. But I am kind of glad that I did, because I got to experience it on my own and really just take in the moment without any distractions whatsoever. But I loved the Loveless scene. I loved the gold saucer date as well in the same chapter. Those were highlights of some incredible character writing. And I really do hope that, well, not that I hope, I really believe that they're going to continue that with the part 3 of this remake trilogy. It's going to be amazing, dudes. And then this is the part where I can get a little bit spoilery, a little tiny bit, but not too much. I don't want to say much of it because I don't want to spoil people that haven't played it. I really loved the story. I am fully on board with the remake trilogy. There's no reason for me to doubt that this is, I guess in a way, catering to my tastes in what I enjoy in storytelling. I don't necessarily think it's the perfect way of telling the story, right? OG did things very, very, very incredible. And I think that this game's take on that storytelling, I mean, it is different without a doubt, right? There's the big mystery box thing that's happening in the background that we just don't know what's really happening. What's happening with Sephiroth? What's his goal? What's up with these multiple timelines or multiple worlds, as it's explained. I like that. I like things with really good hooks and good mysteries. And fucking at the end of Remake, when I finished Remake, I did this like review discussion with Rudy back in the day. We spent an hour and a half plus just talking about Remake because of what it did at the end. That ending was just like, what the fuck, right? So this kept that up for me. I mentioned it earlier that I think that they should have added a little more of the other timeline, other world stuff throughout, a little more than they did. I think that would have helped in keeping that part, because for a while, I knew the beats. I knew what was coming. Every time that Zack came on screen, I was like, oh shit, let's go, But when he wasn't, I still enjoyed my time with it, but I just knew stuff was coming. But then Chapter 9 happens, and all these little different things, like, it's a totally different thing. And then they're so smart. They take the Tifa and Cloud live stream scene that happens much later in the original, and they put it in Chapter 9 of Rebirth, which is still part of Disc 1's, original content. Without spoiling anything, that means that scene, right, of Tifa and Cloud in the live stream from the original, it's going to happen in Part 3. And it makes so much sense because, well, the ending of this game does things that lead to that, I honestly really love the story. I think that there were some things about the ending of this game too that at first felt anticlimactic. However, the more time I let it sit, the more time I kind of started listening to other people's theories and discussions, right? I listened to Night Sky Prince's video, I watched his video. I listened to the Easy Allies and Max podcast. I watched this other guy, it's a much smaller YouTube channel that did a video on the ending of the game and the storytelling, the metaphysical storytelling of this remake trilogy, and compared it to Lost. And it made a lot of sense too, because they have certain similarities when it comes to that like metaphysical stuff. But dudes, I don't know. I genuinely believe that the choices they made at the end and everything about the ending and about that specific scene, and if you know, you know, I think those choices are going to really pay off in part 3. Genuinely. I have zero doubts in my mind. And, you know, I spoke to Sean, who was part of the Gamer Resume a few years back. He felt let down a little bit. He felt a little like whatever about the ending. But I really think that's that first reaction. That first gut reaction is, damn it, I didn't get what I expected / wanted. But I think it's on purpose. I really, really believe it's on purpose. For people that are listening and people that wanted more crazy shit to happen in this game, right? I think it's going to happen. I don't know. I would have to look into it. Maybe I can look into it in a bit. I would have to look into how much inspiration the devs have from like the Evangelion Rebuild series. But in those movies, the first one followed the anime pretty damn closely, minus like one or two things. Then the second movie followed it pretty closely, minus a few things, up until the very end. The very beginning of the second movie was different. And then it went to normal. And then the very end of that movie was a very drastic ending that changed everything. Events took place a lot earlier. Events that never happened in the original anime all of a sudden happened. And then the third movie was all new content, brand new story. This is the unknown journey was there in the third movie, and of course the fourth and final movie as well. Do I think 7 Remake is going to do that? No. I still think not that I think, they know they want to tell their story, right? They want to tell the original story in a new way. But they also have the pseudo sequel thing happening in the background for the longtime fans. That's still going to happen. But I do think, and I do believe, and I do certainly hope that the pseudo sequel stuff happens a lot more often in part 3. But dudes, I don't know. I think it's going to pay off. That the cloud live stream scene, I think is going to destroy us. And again, without getting into spoilers for the ending, if you know what happens at the ending, you know how crucial that revelation will be in part 3 during that scene. And I think I'm going to cry like a baby. If they do it right, they will destroy all of us. And I cannot wait to feel pain. So overall, I absolutely love this game. I don't think any other game is going to come close to beating this as the game of the year for me. I mean, there's a possibility. I'm enjoying Dragon's Dogma 2 a lot right now, but no, there's something about Final Fantasy VII that I have grown to love more over the years. And what the devs did in this game, their confidence in this product, it's admirable. I admire it so much. I think this is one of the best games I've played in a very long time. It's not a perfect game. It has its issues, but damn it. I gave Final Fantasy VII Remake a hella shiny TGR gold. It was like, if I try to be as objective as possible in a very subjective world, right? I give it a gold, you know? But I wanted to give it a plat because, my God, it was so exciting. It made me excited to be a Final Fantasy fan. Rebirth paid off in so many ways to me. This is a platinum. This is a platinum game. This is as close to a modern Final Fantasy game. Like, the dream that I've wanted for a long time is here. This is it. This is what I wanted from Final Fantasy for like 14 years. So I'm just happy it's here. I'm happy they were able to deliver it in such a way. And I'm happy that the game is, the series is in such a place right now. It's such a healthy place. So yeah, TGR Platinum. This is the closest to a perfect Final Fantasy game in a very long time. So yeah, thanks for listening, thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.